An elderly woman left her golden retriever dog in a hot SUV for hours. Most people believe our elders are naturally more compassionate and responsible with their pets. You probably think a grandmother would be the last person to ignore a suffering animal in the summer sun. But here's the thing, negligence does not have an age limit. I am Donna, and I have lived in this Alaskan census area for 85 years. I watched every second of this disaster unfold from my front porch across the street. I am going to tell you exactly how a simple shopping trip turned into a criminal investigation. Martha pulled her heavy SUV into the middle of the asphalt lot. The sun beat down on the black roof, but she didn't look for a spot in the shade. She turned off the engine and hopped out of the driver's seat. Goldie watched her from the back through the thick glass. Martha walked away without even glancing back at his wagging tail. But then she forgot to click the remote for the windows. The glass stayed up tight, so the cabin started to cook immediately. The heat rose 10 degrees in less than 5 minutes. Goldie moved from the leather seat to the floorboards to find a cool spot. However, the carpet was already warm to the touch. He panted hard against the stagnant air. Fact is, the car became a metal oven before Martha even made it to the produce aisle. You know how fast a closed space traps the sun. She didn't seem to care one bit. But here's the thing. The dog was already beginning to struggle. Martha walked through the automatic doors and felt the blast of the air conditioning. She grabbed a plastic basket and headed for the organic dog treats. Suddenly, she saw her old friend Bev near the deli counter. They hadn't spoken in 3 years, so Martha forgot all about her grocery list. They stood there talking about people I haven't thought of in decades. Truth is, time disappears when you're gossiping. The minutes ticked by until an hour had passed. Martha laughed at a joke while Goldie clawed at the SUV's dashboard. But then again, Martha didn't hear the scratching from inside the store. She was too busy describing her new kitchen cabinets. Moreover, she didn't check her watch once. The dog's water bowl in the back was bone dry. So you see, her social life was more important than her pet's life. Guess what happened to the temperature in that car while they talked? Silas finished his shift at the construction site and walked toward his truck. He heard a high-pitched whimper coming from the black SUV. He stopped and looked through the driver's side window, but the tinting was so dark he couldn't see a thing, so he cupped his hands around his eyes and leaned in close. He saw Goldie slumped over the center console. The dog's chest was moving in fast, shallow jerks. Silas banged on the window with his fist, but Goldie didn't jump or bark at the noise. Then again, the dog barely had the energy to lift his head. Silas looked around the parking lot for the owner. Nevertheless, no one was walking toward the vehicle. He ran to the store entrance to find help. At this point, the situation was becoming a life-or-death emergency. Someone had to do something before the dog stopped breathing altogether. Toby was sitting on his skateboard near the entrance when Silas came sprinting up. He saw the panic on the older man's face, so he pulled out his phone and followed him back to the SUV. He hit the record button and pointed the camera at the trapped dog. Actually, he wanted the whole world to see what was happening. Silas shouted for someone to call the police, but the shoppers just walked by with their carts. The crowd started to gather around the vehicle as Toby narrated the scene. He called Martha a monster for leaving a dog in the Alaska sun. Regardless, the store remained silent and no owner appeared. Silas grabbed his tire iron from the bed of his truck. He didn't want to break the law, but the dog's eyes were rolling back. In short, the tension in the parking lot reached a boiling point. The store manager finally came to the front door after hearing the shouting. Silas demanded that he page the owner of the black SUV, but the manager said he wasn't allowed to use the intercom for car issues, so Silas stepped right into the man's face. He told him a dog was dying 10 yards away. Mind you, the manager just pointed at the store policy sign. Toby kept filming the manager's refusal to help. He told his viewers that the store cared more about rules than a living soul. Moreover, the manager went back inside and locked the door. Silas realized he was on his own now. He looked at the tire iron in his hand and then at the dog. Goldie wasn't moving his chest anymore. Actually, it looked like the dog had finally given up. Let's be real for a second. Whew, time was officially up. Silas didn't hesitate for another second. He swung the heavy tire iron against the rear passenger window. But the glass didn't shatter on the first hit, so he adjusted his grip and swung with every bit of his strength. The window exploded into 1,000 tiny pieces. All of a sudden, the smell of extreme heat rushed out of the car. It felt like a furnace door had been opened. He reached inside and pulled the lock on the back door. Toby dropped his phone to help Silas pull the heavy dog out. They laid Goldie down on the hot pavement, but then they realized the asphalt was too hot for his skin, so they dragged him toward the small patch of grass near the sidewalk. The dog was limp like a wet rag. His tongue was purple and dry. I thought he was already dead from my view from the porch. Martha finally walked out of the store with 2 bags of groceries. She saw the crowd and the broken glass around her SUV. She didn't look for the dog first. Instead, she looked at the damage to her expensive car. "Who broke my window?" she screamed at the top of her lungs. But Silas just pointed at the dog lying in the grass. He told her she should be ashamed of herself. Martha claimed she had only been gone for 5 minutes, but Toby held up his phone and showed her the timestamp on his video. She had been inside for over 3 hours. Then again, she tried to say the dog liked being in the car. The crowd started booing her and calling for the police. She tried to get into the driver's seat to leave. Nevertheless, Silas stood in front of the door and wouldn't move. Guess who pulled into the lot with their sirens screaming? The police officers pushed through the crowd to reach Martha. She immediately started crying and pointing at the broken window. She told the officers that Silas was a thief who tried to steal her dog. But then the officers looked at the thermometer they carried in their kit. They put it inside the SUV and waited 1 minute. The digital screen read 120 degrees. The officer asked Martha why she didn't use the pet mode on her dashboard. She stared at him with a blank expression. Basically, she didn't even know her own car had a safety feature for animals. She tried to say she was buying a cooling mat to keep Goldie safe, but the officer looked in her bags and only saw wine and cheese. Her lies were failing her. In the meantime, the vet was working on the dog. She wasn't getting out of this one. The vet from the shop next door knelt in the grass with a bag of ice. He wrapped the ice in towels and placed them under Goldie's armpits. He didn't let the dog drink too much water at once, so he used a spray bottle to mist the dog's mouth. At this point, the dog's tail gave one tiny, weak wag. It was the first sign of life we had seen in 10 minutes. Toby captured the moment the dog's eyes finally focused. The crowd cheered, but Martha stayed by her car with her arms crossed. She complained that the ice was making a mess on the grass. Moreover, she asked the police when she could take her dog home. The officer told her she wasn't taking anything anywhere. He reached for his handcuffs and told her to turn around. As a result, the sweet grandmother image was gone for good. Wow, the justice was just beginning. The judge didn't show Martha any mercy because of her age. He watched Toby's video and saw the dog gasping for air, so he signed an order to remove Goldie from her home forever. Martha had to pay a $5,000 fine for animal cruelty, but the real punishment was the community's reaction. Everyone in the census area saw her face on the news. She stopped going to the market and stayed behind her locked doors. On the contrary, Goldie was adopted by Silas a month later. I see them walking past my porch every morning now. The dog looks happy and healthy in the cool Alaska air. But here's the thing, Martha still thinks she was the victim in this story. Fact is, some people never learn their lesson. Anyway, I have one more thing to tell you. Do you want to know what happened to her SUV? Martha's SUV sat in her driveway with a shattered window and a ruined reputation. She learned that a life is worth more than a social hour, but the cost was her dignity. Do you believe elderly citizens should face harsher penalties for animal neglect? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Next, you need to see what happened when an elderly widow filled her house with 47 cats.